Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Your Longevity Blueprint podcast. Today, my guest is Dr. Tricia Pingel, aka the Hip Hop Energy Doc, who is a naturopathic physician and energy expert. She has helped hundreds of people restore their health by showing them how to identify the stress causing their symptoms, restoring their nutrition depleted by stress, and assisting in changing their mindset to repel incoming stressors so that they can return to their happy, vibrant, and energetic selves. She's the author of the Total Health Turnaround, which has sold over 60,000 copies, creator of DIY programs like the 30-day Total Health Turnaround, the 7-day Ultimate Detox, and the 30-day Walking for Weight Loss. She's the CEO of Total Health Apothecary and the CEO of Pingel Progressive Medicine, a naturopathic concierge medical practice. She's a health blogger and the host of Facebook and Instagram weekly lives Ask Dr. Pingel. She has appeared on lots of TV shows, and she has contributed as an expert to many publications. It's no secret that this mom, doctor, and hip hop enthusiast is known as the Hip Hop Energy Doc. Dr. Pingel is commonly found dancing all over social media, cheering on her 2 boys at football, creating healthy vegan recipes in her kitchen, and snuggling her 3 dogs and cat at home with her husband in Phoenix, Arizona. After experiencing her own health struggles and personal loss, she strives in creating a community of positivity, gratitude, and living every day to its fullest potential. Welcome to the show, Dr. Pingel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I don't even know how to pronounce your name. Did I say that right?
Pingel.
Pingel,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, tell us your story. How did you become the Hip Hop Energy Doc?
I think I was coined a hip hop energy doc because I love to dance, but getting into, and I just feel like, I guess I live every day to its fullest potential. And I've been through so much in my life where I feel like doors have been shut or I've been down on things or whatnot. And I just came to a point in my life where I thought, you know what, we have a limited amount of time on this planet and we might as well spend it doing things that we love to do. And I would say that dance is probably my favorite thing. I don't think, if you ever see me on the dance floor, I'm not worrying about anything else. I think it's probably my biggest stress reliever. So so that's how I became the Hip Hop Energy Doc. And then I figured, well, heck, let's take it to social media and see if people like it. And people do. And I think there's a lot of dancers out there that are afraid to get up and do it because they're afraid of what people will think. But there is so much beauty in dance when it comes to stress reduction and health and exercise and just mood. You just got to keep moving.
I love it. So tell us, have you always had this energy? Kind of tell us a little bit about your personal struggles and how you got into specifically treating adrenal fatigue, because I want to get into adrenal fatigue. I think a lot of the listeners have this. So did you struggle with that? Was that part of your story?
Absolutely. I kind of went into medicine from 2 different perspectives. One, I was that person that was always going to the doctor who wasn't necessarily sick or diseased, but not well, losing hair, low muscle mass, feeling tired, not sleeping well, horrible menstrual periods, horrible gut health. I mean, I was bloated. I had stomach aches from the time I was little. And every time I'd go to the doctor, it was like, hey, you need to go to a therapist. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly fine. You're healthy. Get over it, right? So I went through most of my life with that type of response, I guess, from the conventional medical system. And then when I became a young adult, I experienced a lot of loss. I've lost my dad. I've lost my mom. I've lost my grandparents. Everyone who was around me has passed on. And when they were going through their health struggles, I was there trying to be their patient advocate and dealing with medicine on the other side and not getting the education that I needed to help me feel good and helping them. So all of that kind of came to a head in my late 20s. And I said, you know what, there has to be a better way to have more patient education, more proactive ways to forward your health. And I ended up landing in naturopathic medicine. If you can believe it, I was originally going to be a veterinarian. That was my path, which is why I have, 3 dogs,
several
and a cat,
cats and dogs,
fish tanks and I switched it. I was ready to go to vet school and came across naturopathic medicine and said, you know what, like with everything I've gone through, and I still wasn't well at the time, to be honest, I really wasn't where I wanted to be. But I started on that path, started seeing a naturopath myself and started to realize that I really didn't have a lot to do. it was just small little tweaks. It was just somebody sitting down and looking at me from a holistic point of view and saying, look, your diet needs some adjustment here. You know, these herbs can really help you. Here's where all this is coming from. And I started to just improve. With that, on top of that, also experiencing my own adrenal fatigue because I went through medical school. I had 2 babies. I had a husband. I'm a very driven person. I was exhausted and I was sitting in an office visit one day. I'll never forget it. And I was talking to a patient and she was 100% me. Like I was looking in a mirror and she was like, this is how I feel. This is what I need. This is where I feel lost, whatnot. And I darn near almost started crying during the office visit because I thought,
crap,
okay,
that's me too. Yeah.
I know. I thought, no, this is me too. And if I can sit here and I can help these people, I can help myself. And that I think is the turning point for me personally to where I said, okay, I'm no good to other people if I'm not taking care of myself. And my patients are no good to other people if they're not taking care of their self. So why don't we go on this journey together as a doctor and a patient and let's heal each other? And I think there was just a turning point for me. I started doing my own protocols. I started really paying attention to my outlook on life, prioritizing myself. And amazingly, now I have more energy. I do more. I can take better care of my patients. I enjoy my life. I enjoy my work. And I think so often, Stephanie, we think that we always have to be at the bottom of our list in order to be productive. We have to give to everybody else so that we can get it all done. When in reality, we need to give to ourselves, because if we give to ourselves, it's amazing how it all falls into line.
Totally
So
true.
long story short, that's how I ended up here.
Those, for my listeners who have heard my story, that's kind of why I wrote my book and created my blueprint as well, the longevity blueprint, right? The name of the podcast, because I was struggling with issues and I was helping patients and I thought, man, I'm treating other people and not treating myself. So let's create this protocol that I too can follow to regain my health. So our stories sound a little similar in that. But I also think I've had adrenal fatigue. I think I still have some degree of that. So let's define that for the listener. So what exactly is adrenal fatigue?
I think we all have it because we now live in a society where we're just constantly stimulated, right? So adrenal fatigue ultimately means that the adrenal glands are dysregulated. They're not working as they're supposed to. Now, this could mean that cortisol is too high. This could mean that it's too low. This could mean that it's in between, like a roller coaster, which is how I find most people. It's up, down, up, down, up, down. And I think we've kind of created this society where we're constantly stimulated. And because we're so stimulated, we feel unstimulated. Does that make sense? Like we think, oh, we need more coffee. Yeah. Oh, we need more coffee. Oh, we need medications to boost us up. Oh, we need to take stimulants because we're so tired. When really what's happening is our body is just simply overstimulated, and that causes fatigue. It causes an overwhelm, just breakdown of everything we do. When we look at adrenal function, we're looking at essentially two different nervous systems: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight. I often say, if you were in the woods and you're taking a hike and you see a bear, right? What happens in that moment? You know, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you start to panic, you get really honed in and you start running. And you don't pay attention to the flowers you run by. You don't even know what direction you're running. You just run, right? And during that time, you don't stop to have sex. You don't stop to eat. You don't digest your food, you just run and you get away from it. And we were built to do that. And it's actually a very efficient system. But our problem is we continue to turn the corner and see another bear. Sometimes there's 5 bears. Sometimes there's just stuff coming at us. And so what happens is spend less and less time in that parasympathetic nervous system. I can't remember, maybe you know, I had looked at the stats at one point. It was like we spend minimum of 80% of our time in sympathetic fight or flight, when we're supposed to only be spending like 15 to 20% of our time in it. So it's no wonder that we have cardiovascular disease, we have diabetes, we have GERD, you know, reflux disease, we have anxiety, we have depression, we have insomnia. Of course, because if you're constantly running from a bear, you can't do any of the maintenance and you're depleting all of your nutrients, vitamin C, B vitamins, minerals. You know, even so what you consume doesn't even get absorbed appropriately. And we end up in what I call a hamster wheel of just slow disease development.
Yeah.
And to your point, that sure impacts our longevity. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I really do think it's important for us to start to be mindful of how much time are we really spending over here when we should be spending more time over here dancing or doing something that we really want to do.
So for the listeners, I know we've talked a little bit about this on the show, but how would one know if they're in fight or flight or not? Because I think sometimes even with my story, I had severe tachycardia. And honestly, back then, I mean, now looking back in that moment, of course I was overstressed, had way too much on my plate, whatnot. But in the moment, I didn't think I did. I had a great morning seeing patients. I sat down at my desk and all of a sudden I had this super high heart rate and landed me in the ER. Like I was like blind to the fact that I was probably on this sympathetic overdrive in that moment, right? So how does one know if they are in fight or flight or not? And how do you with your patients kind of test for this adrenal fatigue?
Yeah. For me, one of the big indicators is you have a symptom, you go to the doctor and you're told there's nothing there. You have tachycardia. Oh, your heart's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, then what's causing it? Oh, well, it's fine. You're fine. Okay. Maybe we should think about this being a physiological functional response, right? And I think it takes a lot of self-reflection. And I think anytime you don't feel great, I have this thing which always drives me crazy is you go to the doctor and let's say you're 50 and they're like, oh, that's normal for 50. And there's like this acceptance that we're supposed to be feeling like crap. Like that's normal. And I just can't subscribe to that. I certainly don't expect to feel like I'm 15 when I'm 50, but at the same time, I should feel good. And if I don't, and nobody's telling me why, they're just throwing a medication at me and managing the symptom, I think that's a good indication that you should have a full workup. As far as the full workup goes, I love biochemistry. Probably my favorite thing. I'm a total dork. And I love to get a full blood workup of the entire endocrine system, lay it all out and balance it next to each other. There is so much information that comes from that. Is the body storing estrogen? What are the DHEA levels? What's the conversion between testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone? Could progesterone be going to cortisol? There's all these little things that happen. Is the thyroid storing? There's all these little things that happen in that interim between health and disease in the body, right? And when you can look at that as a holistic picture and really sit down and have a full discussion with your doctor about it, it usually becomes pretty clear as to what's going on. There are all these specialty tests, and I think when people are a little bit newer to evaluating this, they use them. For me, it's been so many years that when I sit down and I look at a full overview and I talk to someone about their symptoms, we usually collectively come to a decision that there might be a little more fight or flight going on than maybe being recognized. The cool part is when you realize what it is, how fast you can remedy it. I mean, I think we're missing so much education, right?
Yeah.
You go into the doctor, oh, your labs are all off. Take care. It's like, well, wait a minute. Tell me why. I mean, it's a lot easier to commit to a diet and lifestyle when you know why you're doing it. I could hand someone 20 supplements, but if they don't understand what they're trying to do or what markers we're trying to watch and modify, they're not going to be as compliant, right? So I think addressing this is just having the opportunity to sit with someone who understands it and really have a good powwow about the mental, emotional health and the physical health and how they blend together.
I agree. I run a lot of the same lab tests. And once you've been in this long enough, we both have probably been at this over a decade. It's like you can just kind of tell the patient that walks in your office, which is probably the majority of them, right? That their adrenals are stressed, whatnot. Can you talk about the difference between someone who has high cortisol and low cortisol? So what would be the difference in those symptoms? Yes, some people fluctuate, but just for the listeners, let's kind of talk about symptoms of high and low cortisol.
Yeah. So I break it down in stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So stage 1 is high, stage 2 is roller coaster, stage 3 is on the floor, right? So stage 1 high, it's let's call it the superwoman phase. You're kicking butt, you're doing everything, you're on top of it, you feel like you're on top of the world, you're in control, you're taking stuff on. Oh, hey, I need this. Oh, I'll do it. You just keep bringing stuff on. You might not be sleeping as well, but you're not necessarily fully exhaused yet. I have seen in more recent years, but I have seen in recent years a lot of ADD in this stage. a lot of just lack of focus, feeling kind of like you have so much going on. A lot of the times you can get very overwhelmed during this stage because it's that never ending to-do list. Most people I meet by the time they come to me is stage 2, because stage 1, you feel great. It's not until it starts to fluctuate that you go, gosh, I can't really sustain this, can I? What was it? My grandmother used to say, burning the candle at both ends, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're good. And then it gets down there and it hits. We spend a lot of time in stage 2. I think it takes a lot longer than people think to get to stage 3. We go up and down for a while. When you hit stage 3, the cortisol is just not pumping out. It's just not. It's at a very low level, almost to the point of an adrenal insufficiency. By the time you get there, there's usually a ton of pain, a ton of depression, a ton of weight loss, almost a hopelessness. My goal when I went into this and I started recognizing the very strong impact of stress on health is I really have a mission to catch people in stage 1. I really want to capture them then, or the beginnings of stage 2, because all of the rest of that can be prevented if you can just recognize, if people can start to recognize how much they're on. Here's a test for you, maybe not for you, for your audience, for sure. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? Most people check their phone. Cortisol. Like that's a problem. Dopamine hit, you're hooked to the phone. Before you go to bed, do you check your phone? So when you get home from work every day or whatever you're doing, are you constantly checking your phone? So every time you're doing that, it's your body saying, oh, I need more. I need more. Give me more stimulation. Give me more stimulation. And it's almost like an addiction. So I usually can tell just from that question alone how stressed out the person is, because that in itself causes cortisol irregularity. So taking time for yourself in the morning, waking up, spending time with your family, drinking some water, going outside, maybe if you drink a cup of coffee or tea, going outside and just sitting. I personally love to listen to music. Some people like it silent, and not jump right into that go, 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 go superwoman.
Stimulation. Yeah. I hear I listen to a lot of podcasts, you probably do as well, but I hear a lot of very successful people just say, I'm not looking at my phone until 10 a.m. or whatnot. Right? They don't even go there. And I think that takes so much self-control, but I see the value in that too. So that can be a charge to our listeners to at least try to push off looking at your phone a half an hour, try to push that out.
Yeah. I mean, I think back when we were growing up, when I was in school, my mom would go to work and she'd check her voicemails at work. And return her phone calls at work. And then she'd come home and maybe she'd check the answering machine and see if there was anything pending. And then she sat down and had dinner with me. And then, whatever we did for the evening, and then we went to bed. She didn't go back to the office and check her voicemails. And I think, I'm a concierge doctor, right? I'm accessible, but at the same time, I still set those boundaries. Okay. I check my phone between, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. and I schedule all my stuff during the day. And I think it just comes down to setting a lot of boundaries so that you can actually be more available and more present in your own life, which brings joy, happiness, and longevity.
Yes. And we're allowing you, I don't like the word charge. I need to find a different word than charge, but we're telling the listeners that it's okay to do that. Right? We're
it's
recommending
totally
you
okay.
Giving you permission. That's what I was looking for. Giving you permission to do that. Yep. So let's talk about how adrenal fatigue is approached by traditional conventional medicine. I think you kind of already said they just say, you're fine.
It's not. It's not. I mean, I get pushback on that all the time. I'll post something, if adrenal fatigue isn't real, adrenal fatigue isn't real. I'm like, okay, well, if it's not real, then why does 80% of America complain of stress-related fatigue in office visits? Well, I mean, that's a pretty big number. I think fatigue might even be the number one complaint in our country. Sure. And if we're not going to do something about that, we're just going to dismiss it. I mean, it's sad. And I think that's where we come in, is to really look at where's that interim between health and disease. I've had so many patients go in and have their cortisol tested through urine and they didn't come back with Addison's disease. So all of a sudden they were fine, yet their cortisol rhythms were all over the place and they felt horrible. To go to a doctor feeling horrible and leave the doctor feeling horrible, and then 6 months later still feel horrible, and then 6 months after that still feel horrible. I can imagine if I hired a plumber to like fix my sink and it was in exactly the same condition a year later, I probably wouldn't rehire them. So I think they need to open up to, I think they need to open up to this opportunity. Now, with that said, I've met so many amazing physicians in the conventional world that absolutely believe in adrenal fatigue and treat adrenal fatigue. And I'm so grateful for that, because I do think it's changing. Historically, though, it's been pretty much ignored. And I think your audience would probably agree to that. And how many people have gone in and said, I'm just tired. Okay, take care.
Yeah. And that's really, I think, begs the importance of functional medicine. I'm glad that you're feeling like more conventional docs are being maybe more open-minded to this now, but that again kind of begs part of my book, as far as I kind of describe the difference between conventional medicine and functional medicine. Conventional medicine being more the fire department. They're here to put out big, bad, ugly fires. So if you have Addison's disease, they'll treat you, right? Or if you have a heart attack, they'll treat you. But more of the carpenter approach, where we help repair and rebuild the body, happens with functional medicine, not with conventional medicine. So let's talk about rebuilding patients' bodies when they have adrenal fatigue. So tell us your process for kind of helping people with adrenal fatigue.
Yeah, and it's highly customized, but it essentially comes down to 4 different areas. 1, diet. You have to eat a diet that repletes the nutrients being lost by stress. So nutrient-dense food. Now, I'm personally plant-based. People always say, oh gosh, does that mean I have to go vegan? No, it doesn't mean you have to go vegan. Everybody's body is different. What I'm looking for is, are you eating nutritionally sound food that's replenishing what's being lost? That's what I care about. And does it work for you, right? Number 2, there's always an element of exercise. We have to get moving. Now, somebody in stage 3 is probably going to have a different exercise regimen than someone in stage 1. But something to consider is, often, especially when you're starting to gain some extra weight, you always think that more is better. The more you run, the more you push, with adrenal fatigue, that's not always the case, because you're already in a stimulated state. You're already running from a bear every day. So if you add on more bears, that's not always great. I've had more clients over the years, particularly in stage 1 and early stage 2, that when they actually backed away from exercise and just did strength training, Pilates, yoga, they lost weight after doing CrossFit and, HIIT and all this for years. So
it's totally my story. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but that's totally my story.
No,
so
please.
Many of my health issues kind of happened, I would say, shortly after I got married, and I was trying to get fit. So I was doing CrossFit because I used to be a gymnast, and I thought, to have any sort of muscle gain, I have to do CrossFit. And it got to the point where I literally could not physically, I pushed my body way too hard, but I got to the point where I couldn't do it. I couldn't even get on a treadmill. My heart rate was so high, even jogging on a treadmill, my heart was going so high. I'm like, what's going on? Why am I so short of breath? It was like, know your limits. I was pushing myself just way too hard. And so I do tell patients, it's not that you can't do CrossFit. You need to listen to your body, but don't do CrossFit 6 days a week. Do yoga on some off days, right? Have calming down days if you're going to have some stimulating days, and just pay attention to kind of where you're at with adrenal fatigue and whatnot. So I'll
100% agree.
Go back. I interrupted you, but you were saying number 1, number 2, and then let's go on to 3 and 4.
Number 3 is supplement. Often we can't replenish some of those nutrients, or you see in the blood work that maybe there's some hormone conversion issues or some liver congestion, or, things that all inflammation, maybe the immune system is taking a hit from the stress. Stress impacts every aspect of our body. And that's what my book goes into, is it basically is stress is the core. And then each chapter talks about the top 10 medical conditions in our country and how stress contributes to those or causes them, and probably is the most unrecognized factor and untalked about. No one talks about it. So so often you go and you customize a supplement approach to that. There's some generals, almost always they're going to have to be on some sort of methylated B vitamin or some sort of C, and usually minerals and probiotics. But then often they do have to do extensive liver or hormone support or such as that. Number 4 is the hardest one, hands down, because anybody can, just follow the rules and change their diet, exercise, and take supplements. But the hardest part is in the brain. To turn off that phone, to say no to people, to prioritize yourself, to practice gratitude with your body. I think when you're under a lot of stress, it's real easy to be, Debbie Downer. It's easy to look at yourself in the mirror and say, oh, I look horrible. I don't look like I used to. My clothes don't fit. I'm miserable. Why can't you be better? Why can't you be like I used to be? And that's just bringing down that energy and keeping you in that fight or flight, that urgent emergency stage of I have to do something, as opposed to just saying, okay, I am where I am right now because I'm supposed to be here. And I'm going to now move forward with gratitude and appreciation and positivity to improve my life, and improve others' lives. I don't think anyone can argue that when you genuinely give to somebody else in some way, you feel better about yourself. So some of those techniques that I use is writing a gratitude journal. And this could be as simple as, I was running late for work today by 10 minutes. And instead of saying, oh, I was late to work, it's like, but I got 10 more minutes with my child at home. And that was great, right? Taking something and reframing it and turning it positive.
Yeah.
I
Reframing,
also,
that's good. Yep.
it's huge. Yeah. Because it's so easy to pick the negative. And by the way, and if you're on your phone
And we're
and scrolling social
conditioned to
media,
pick
there's
the
negative
negative.
everywhere. Oh, 100%. And the last couple of years have been absolute testament to that. Just the more negative stuff we're seeing, the more anger we have as a collective. I mean, as a collective unit, the more distress, the more fear, the more anger. And fear and anger don't lead to progress. They keep you in the same spot, right? So sometimes there's a level of acceptance that has to happen, and goal setting and gratitude and appreciation to move to the next level. One of my favorite practices is I try to smile at 3 people a day.
Like strangers, just random people.
Random. Yeah. Like I'll go to the grocery store and I'll be in line and someone will be there and I'll just smile at them and say, hi, good morning. And it's funny because often they're caught in their head in that moment. They're thinking about what they're supposed to do next. But I almost break the cycle for them by just saying, hey, how's your day? Good morning.
Yeah.
And then they smile back. And then I receive that energy back from them. And usually it doesn't always prompt a conversation, but it usually prompts a break in that energy, that nervous go type energy. So that's one of my favorite practices that everybody could go do right now or tomorrow morning. Walk in, just say hi to people, especially someone that looks like maybe they need it.
Yeah.
So, someone that's just really occupied, just to create more community, less stress on them and on you.
Beautiful. Okay. I want to unpack some of what you said, though. I want to go back, and I hope you don't mind. I'm going to ask you a personal question because I don't know you super well. So tell me why you're vegan. I'm just curious. I mean, I have had many vegans on the show and they've kind of given me their response to that, but kind of tell me your reasoning.
Well, and I should say I'm not technically vegan because I will still eat honey. So mine came 100% from a health perspective.
Sure.
When I was a kid, I had horrible stomach aches all the time. And everyone would keep trying to feed me meat. And that's what my family, I grew up in Seattle. We had a lot of fish. I did okay with fish. But anytime someone would give me any red meat, I would take a couple bites and just go, and I would start eating all the vegetables. As I got older and I started to really hone in on what my body was asking for, I just don't feel well when I eat it. And this has been a gradual progression over time. I started by eliminating beef, poultry. I still ate fish and dairy for a while. Cutting out dairy was a huge game changer for me. Huge. My stomach aches went away. My acne went away. My fatigue went away. My bloat went away. I had so many digestive concerns for years that nobody ever asked me about at doctor's visits. Nobody ever said, hey, how often do you go to the bathroom? Ever. If they would have asked me when I was 13, I would have said once every 10 days. They didn't ask. Right. So I didn't tell them. Right. So then I gradually started eliminating more and started to find that when I eat something that my body doesn't agree with, I have a reaction. So I started to notice that anytime I would eat a meat product, my body would have some sort of reaction, and I thrive and have better energy when I lean more towards plant-based foods. So it's been a gradual thing. I still will eat honey. If there's an egg in something, if it's a gluten-free cupcake on my son's birthday and it has egg in it, I seem to do okay with it. But I find if I eat eggs regularly, even like grass-fed, organic,
high quality,
I start to develop symptoms. So I think it was the result of me just listening to what works for me. I'm very tall, I'm very thin, I'm very active. I'm a blood type A, I am like, my body is like, bring on the plant.
Do you have any, I know when I read your bio, obviously you've written several, or you have several recipes, like vegan recipes. Would you mind sharing maybe one or two of your favorite, recipes, something that you incorporate on a daily basis?
Absolutely. And I have all these on my website at drpingel.com. So definitely check that out. I think my favorite meals usually are some sort of bowl. So because it allows me to kind of look at the macros a little bit. So I'll usually have some sort of grain, and I'm gluten-free. So it's usually a quinoa or buckwheat or millet. I love millet. If you haven't tried millet, man, oh, I love millet. So I'll usually have a little bit of that, and then I'll have a bunch of variety of vegetables. I usually try to have multiple colors. I love sweet potatoes. I love broccoli. I think broccoli is probably my favorite. Sometimes I'll swap up broccolini. I'll throw different like variety of vegetables. And then for a protein, I'll typically do something like a lentil, or I'll do garbanzo beans or hummus. And I love nuts and seeds. So I pile nuts and seeds onto everything. And sometimes it's hot. I'll do different types of sauces. I think the key to vegan cooking or to plant-based cooking, and this may extend into meat cooking as well, is the sauce. It's the flavoring, and it's finding different and creative ways to make sauce. So I use a lot of ginger. I use a lot of cayenne. I use a lot of cardamom. I'm really a fan of Southern Indian cooking, where it's just warm. Ayurvedically, it's just very warm food. That works really well for me. It keeps my digestion going. It keeps me full of energy. With that said, my husband's completely the opposite, right? So everyone is so unique and so different. And I think if I can get a client to start to listen to what their body's asking for and feeding that, that's where I see the success. But some of my favorite recipes on my website, my sweet potato enchiladas, love those. I personally eat organic, non-GMO tofu. That's kind of a taboo area. Some people say yes, some people say no. Really, for me, it comes down to balance. I'm trying to think of another one. I have a vegan chocolate tart.
We can go to your website. They're on your website. Yeah, I just thought I'd ask. Yeah, and I also ask.
But bowls are the easiest because they're quick and you can prep them ahead of time, and it's just whatever you have on hand, And once you get that all laid out and you kind of have a general 5 different sauces you could use, you can take the same bowl and make it Mexican, Indian, Asian. Like you can change the flavorings in it and make it a completely different meal. And I think that's probably why bowls are my go-to.
And if you're listening and you choose to eat meat, organic meat, hopefully, right, you can easily add in some lamb, some beef, whatnot, right, to those bowls easily. Yeah. So here's another question.
So
have you always been so positive, or did you used, because you strike me as that person who would smile at me at Hy-Vee. Like you're that person who, or the grocery store. Sorry, if you're not from Iowa, you don't know what Hy-Vee is. That's our grocery store. Have you always been this way? Is this in your blood? Or did the kind of losses and the struggles you've gone through, right, and you kind of having that adrenal fatigue, whatnot, kind of flip a switch in you that turned you more positive, would you say?
Both. I think when I was a child, I was very wide-eyed, very happy, very charismatic type personality. And I think the loss, the struggles, the pain, the grief, took me down to where I wasn't really myself. I was just going through the motions. I kind of felt like, I don't know, not so severe as that I wouldn't have taken my life to anything to that extent, but something of just why move forward? Like if everything's falling down, why keep doing this? And what's the point type attitude? And I think I had that for a little while, and I lost the spark in my eyes. And when I look at pictures from that time and I compare it to now, it's gone. Like the sparkle that I have refound, it was completely gone. And I think that experience and coming out of that is what has made me positive. And it was a huge tragedy that did that. And I don't think I would have come out of it if I wouldn't have lost my mom and I wouldn't have gone through that horrible grief. I don't think I would have appreciated so much of what I had and where I'm at and what my health is. And I watched her, I went through cancer with her and watched her decline. And when she was maybe about a month before she passed, I said, "Hey Mom, do you have any regrets?" And she said, "You know what I regret the most?" And I said, "What?" She goes, "Worrying about those stupid 10 pounds. How much time have I wasted?" And I thought, God, that's a really good point. She said, "I'd give anything to have that 10 pounds right now," because she had wasted down to about 80 pounds. She was 5'10", had no muscle mass, and, passed a few weeks after that. And so I do think there was they always say with great loss and great tragedy comes amazing opportunity. and change. And I 100% believe in that. So I would say I'm now like I was when I was a kid.
Yeah. Walking proof
Now
of
I'm
it.
like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
dance, let's live each moment, because guess what? I could wake up tomorrow and not be here. And I think that's become so real to me with losing everybody, how precious life is and how short time actually is, and that we really have no control over it outside of just living every day to its fullest.
Amen. Absolutely. Okay. This is a great show. Before we wrap it up, though, I want to go back and spend a little bit of time on supplements, because you very briefly kind of flew through those when you were saying, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's go back to what supplements, right, you heavily use for these patients who are really suffering, right? Because you're saying stress depletes nutrients. So which ones do you commonly supplement with your patients? Let's spend a little bit of time there and talk about herbs too. You're a naturopath. So let's talk about
I was going to say,
top herbs.
We've got herbal. Yeah, we've got herbal and we've got nutritional. So on the herbal side, I use blends because when you're working with herbs, they very rarely work just by themselves. They have a very balancing action to them. So for example, I love ashwagandha because you can put ashwagandha in balance with rhodiola or ginseng, and ginseng won't be as stimulatory, but it will help with the adrenal gland. So there's some balancing going on. I will say ashwagandha is a nightshade. Some people are allergic to nightshades. A lot of people don't know that. They start taking an adrenal herb blend and they feel horrible. So I do want to point that out. Some of the herbs that I use in the evening to calm cortisol, help you sleep, better focus, is I use amino acids, such as, this is a mouthful for your audience, I'll break it down slow, phosphatidylserine, and L-theanine, which are both amino acids. And usually I combine those with things like bacopa, ashwagandha. Those are some of the general ones. And then there's also blends you can take in the morning that kind of wake your adrenal glands up, which would be more along the lines of rhodiola, ginseng, sometimes licorice. I still put ashwagandha in there. Yeah, those are the basics. I mean, they kind of vary a little bit. On the nutrient side, you deplete B vitamins hands down with stress. And B vitamins are used in pretty much anything that has to do with metabolism, breaking down fats, breaking down proteins, creation of energy. So B vitamins, and I'm very specific that they need to be methylated. It's a whole nother show to talk about MTHFR, but I have MTHFR mutations. My family had them. I'm pretty sure that's how my dad passed of cardiovascular disease, because nobody paid attention to that mutation. So I'm very big on methylated vitamins. Vitamin C, very important for the adrenal glands, and any other sort of antioxidant. So that could be in the form of herbal, could also be in the form of using N-acetylcysteine, which is an amino acid, to go make more glutathione, selenium, zinc, and definitely magnesium. Magnesium depletes like crazy under stress. So minerals, B vitamins, vitamin C, herbs. And then, as always, there is a huge link between the brain and the gut. So I always like a really good probiotic in there and make sure that gut flora is good. Those would be the main ones. And then I tweak from there. If they're going through menopause or they're having menstrual issues, there might be some additional liver support over there. I do take personally a really good liver support every night. I feel much better when I do. I have better energy. I feel like I digest things better. So I always think it's great for general health, but it doesn't necessarily always relate to adrenal fatigue directly.
Sure. Awesome. Good summary. Okay. Well, tell us, I read a little bit about this in your bio, but where can listeners find you?
drpingel.com is a great start. It has all of my handles on there. Definitely Instagram and TikTok. I do a little bit more dancing than on Facebook, but definitely check that out. But drpingel.com.
Awesome. Awesome. And last but not least, what is your top longevity tip?
Reduce your stress and prioritize yourself.
Did you hear that, listeners? Say that again. Say that one more time.
Reduce your stress and prioritize yourself. Prioritize your health. You have to. You don't have a choice. Otherwise, you're going to just keep getting stepped on and get farther and farther down the chain, and it'll be harder and harder to come back up.
So you actually do have a choice. I'm going to correct you. You do have a choice. You can do nothing. And then what you said will happen, right? Your health will deteriorate. But yeah,
we always have a choice. And that's actually a great point you bring up. We always have a choice. Like, you could go into the grocery store and not smile at someone. That's your choice. But you won't have as good of a day than if you do. right?
So do it. Doctor's orders. That's great. Well, thank you so much today for coming on the show and sharing how important it is for us to recognize how stressed we really are, to put that cell phone down, and really teaching us to set boundaries, teaching us what we can do about adrenal fatigue. So thank you for sharing your story and coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.